bids are in, the gavel is dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, here at WineBid, we are finally hammered. With you as always is myself, Jeff McGurn, from our marketing team, and of course my compatriot here, Paul Walker. Welcome to Finally Hammered again this week, Paul. This is WineBid's podcast dedicated to all things wine value and wine auctions. And this, of course, is our wine auction recap episode. We had a pretty interesting auction this last week. There's a lot of stuff that got bid on. We had some, record numbers of bids and everything else. And of course, what we want to do here is go ahead and recap everything that happened this last week. But before we do that, I just wanted to wish Paul here a very happy birthday. Happy birthday, Paul. Hopefully you had some nice wine. I did not know it was Paul's birthday. Otherwise, I would have bought him a 6-liter or a 9-liter of Diamond Creek, like I know Paul is going to buy for me for my birthday, which is coming up here very soon. So, Paul, you probably want to keep an eye out for Diamond Creek. I will also take Domaine Noir and Jaillet as well. Okay. Those would be, as long as it's Magnum or bigger. Right.
Okay. Yeah. Large format. Got it.
No problem. It's got to be. It's got to be a large format. It's going to be a big birthday for me. Turning the big 3-0 this year.
I thought it was going to be 70. Okay.
I'm not yet as old as you. No. So anyway, let's talk about what went this week. The item that got the most bids was our 2020 Alice et Olivier de Moore Chablis Bel Air.
First off, wine we mentioned,
wine we mentioned
in the podcast. This is starting to become a trend. And so there's something going on here with these wines. If the number one, most bid upon item in last week's auction was something we mentioned, then hey, got to be something going on. Now, granted, I think didn't it have many trackers before we even mentioned it?
That's not the point. It didn't have 36 trackers, which is what it had after we mentioned it, and it got 9 bids. Started at $35, sold for $59.
Well, I don't think we even get the name. Yeah, it was Alice and Olivier de Moore Chablis Bel Air et Clardy.
Yes,
2020. So relatively very recent release for Chablis, and great producer. I've mentioned them in the past. I always thought that speaking of value, they were sort of underappreciated at auction, sought after, and rare to a degree, but not that, expensive. And of course, this one, almost hammered at 60, so 59. But which is still, that's still not nearly out of line. We're going to mention some other Chablis in the current auction that's far and away a lot more than that. So.
$60 for a top tier Chablis, a really good Chablis. I don't think it's crazy. We had a 2014 Jacques Puffiny, another one we mentioned.
Pulsar M. This is kind of bonkers. I think that this particular designation, Pulsar M, whatever the M refers to, I do not know, but
it's a letter.
Yeah, there's something about it that collectors are very interested in. So. No, I was surprised. That was a high number for this particular wine. In fact, I meant to look up other vintages because we have seen this before. And, the 2010 did hammer for 140 not too long ago. So that's not too surprising. But then the 2006 hammered for 63 a few years back. So, it's rare for sure. But
look, let this be a lesson to you growers, producers. I myself am not a producer, but I feel like this should be a lesson to us all that 100% Pulsar wines are commercially viable. This got 9 bids.
If you have a really nice piece of soil in Jura, sure.
Then yes, started at $45, hammered at $164, and there were 2 bottles that went. So, Pulsar, is it the next Pinot Noir? I don't know, Paul. But what I do know is that this one was very desirable. We had a 2010 Martin Mullen Schrebacher Hünberger Riesling Spätlese Hünerberg Riesling Spätlese Trocken Nummer 18. And this one, did we mention this one? We mentioned a bunch of Rieslings.
I don't know if you mentioned this or not, but there were quite a few interesting German wines last week. It was interesting that it got, so many bids for what? Well, there were 5 bottles too. So
5 bottles, 9 bids.
some stuff to go around, but still it got a lot of activity, a lot of attention.
Well, $20 for Spätlese, say it's got 13 years of age on it. I mean, I don't even know if you could say it's within its drinking window, although I'm sure it's drinking fantastically right now.
Yeah.
That wine could probably lay down for quite a bit longer. We had a...
do you see that Saint-Péray Blanc? Some of these Rhone wines.
I was just going to mention that, the Saint-Péray Blanc.
It's interesting because a lot of the Northern Rhone wines we mentioned last week definitely got bid. I wasn't surprised. There was a pretty incredible collection of stuff from Cornas and Saint Joseph and Côte Rôtie and everything, and so that was really fun to see. I think like similarly, I'm just kind of skipping around here, but there was 15 Jasmin and Côte Rôtie like Girofleury. $50 started at 50. There were 10 of them. So I would imagine that would go close to the reserve, but no, they got bid up fairly significantly. I think hammered at $70, $71 a piece. So, a lot of activity for multiple bottle lots like that. The Laurent Tribut Chablis got multiple bids. Let's see, the Beaurois started at 45 and got bid up to 81 in one case. A couple the 17 started at 50, got up bid up to 82. So a lot of activity on some of these rare and very sought after, very popular, at least in wine circles. That is, I don't know, I don't want to say cognoscenti, but that's the word that comes to mind for some of these Northern Rhone rarities and Chablis and everything else. So.
Did you see the 2011 Peter Michael Montplaisir?
Yeah, that was kind of funny.
That's another one we mentioned. That one ended up with 8 bids, started at 60, sold it at $69. So that one got bid up. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of surprising, that actually that occurred, because it could be just the fact that it's from 11, and there aren't, a huge number of domestic Chardonnay, shall we say, that will last for 10, 20 years. But Peter Michael's aged really, really well, and so I think that was an interesting example that people went after.
I think, did you mention the 2020 Domaine de Marnes Blanc Côte de Jura Chardonnay? That one started.
Another Jura wine.
Another Jura.
Yeah.
Started at 25, hammered at 65 or 64 after 7 bids. And then there was the Joseph Rotige of Richambertin. That one 45 started at 7 bids, took it to 57. And then the 2008 Poulot Brut Cuvée Millésime. That one 19 trackers, 7 bids, started at 40. Hammered at 76, right?
That's pretty good activity. That's pretty impressive.
There was just a lot of action, I feel like, at auction this week. Another one that I thought was really cool, and I don't think I mentioned this, but I think I was ogling a little bit, was a 77 Claude Duval, Grand Val Cabernet Sauvignon. Yeah. Started at 80 and 6 bids, took it to 98.
Yeah, no, that's getting close to $100 for, reasonably good vintage 70s Claude Duval. I think 78 and 74 would have gone higher, but the Grand Val Cabernet too, I don't know if this is considered sort of superior to the estate Cabernet Sauvignon. It's not in the same league as the Reserve Cab, but yeah, that was interesting to see. I'm not too surprised that it's edging up to $100. Côte d'Ivoire's, suddenly become, well, not suddenly, but in the last 5-10 years has become much more sought after and more valuable. So
yeah, I think I haven't had the Grand Val. I've had the Hirondelle, and I have a bottle of the Hirondelle, and that's quite good. And we actually have some at auction this week, which I'm going to mention later. There was some more Jura Domaine de Marnes Blanc, Blanchesse, or whatever, I don't know. 29 trackers on one, 26 trackers on the other. Each one had 6 bids starting at 35, one hammered at 46, the other at 51. I thought it was really cool to see a lot of Jura wine that was getting a lot of action at auction. There, it just goes to show you that the market's not only for Burgundy and Bordeaux and even just the Rhone. There's a lot of appeal to other regions. And then I think other than that, I would, there was the 1999 Vranken Demoiselle Brut. That one, 17 trackers, 6 bids, started at 45, hammered at $99.
That's significant. I wouldn't have expected it to double. I mean, that's a rare producer and not as well known, or not as even sort of readily available here on the West Coast, as far as I can tell. But yeah, that's a lot. That's a significant increase. And they'll see that happen with these, with these rare champagnes. But That, yeah, 99 Franc and Demoiselle. That's La Parisienne, right? That's the one you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, that was impressive. A couple of Italian wines too. There was these Alessandro Giannatalli Fantino
Saw
for
those.
Lucia Reserva. Yeah, Cascina Dardi started at 55 and hammered at 72, I think, 73. So that was pretty impressive. One of these, I think a Burgundy that we, or no, excuse me, a Côte Rôtie that we mentioned last week, 2010 Cluzel Roque, Côte Rôtie La Vallière. Let's see, started at 65, hammered at 79. That was pretty impressive too. And let's see, there were a couple other wines.
There was a O2 Domaine Huet Vouvray, the Hadlieu Demi Sec. I think I can't remember if I mentioned that or if I didn't mention it because I was going to bid on it. But that I think I did mention that one last week. But I did mention that one. That one ended up starting at 40. 5 bids took it to $72. I mean, I don't know. That seems like a lot for Domaine Huet Vouvray. I mean, that stuff is so good, and that thing had 21 years of age on it, especially for a demi sec. I bet the thing's singing right now.
Yeah. I know you love Huet. You love to bring it on.
I love Huet.
I never even think about it. Well, not that I don't think about it, but it's good stuff, and it will last a long time. So I wanted to mention a couple, more things that got a lot of activity. We're talking about that champagne that almost doubled. There were couple other, Chardonnays that were very surprising. We talked about the Sandy wines, and I don't think we mentioned this one specifically, but there was a 2010 Rita's Crown Chardonnay, started at 35 and hammered at 51. I thought that was pretty wild. Again, it's like the Peter Michael. It's probably impossible to find, anywhere. And so this is one of those rare examples, and I'm sure it's great. As Raj knows what he's doing. It's great wine. And then there was this Pyramid Valley Vineyards Lion's Tooth Chardonnay, and started at 20 and hammered at 63. And that was really wild. So this looks like, another one of these wines where it's just rare and it's got some time on it. Somebody obviously knows it probably, ages well, but I have zero experience with this producer. So that was cool. And then for let's say the Pinot Noir equivalent in a different format, we saw a 90 René Angel Echezot start at 1130 and hammered at 2030. So that almost doubled in price too, which was...
While we're on Pinot Noir, 2017 Enderle and Mal, und Mal.
All kinds of those wines did last week, huh?
Yeah, this is the one we talked about. This one, 16 trackers, 5 bids. We had 2 of them that sold. They went from 25 was the starting price. They sold for $45 each, which I was a little bit surprised at. And then there was even some more action. Remember, we mentioned the Kilberg wines, Goldtropfen Riesling Cabinet number 22. That one started 25, hammered at 46, and we had 4 of those that hammered that. So that one got, and actually a bunch of the Kilbergs got action on them. So a lot of really interesting sort of German stuff, like some non-traditional stuff that's really getting a lot of bidding and a lot of interest, which I think is super cool. Although it does concern me that people are going to start getting interested in really good regions that have reasonably priced wine, and that stuff's now going to become more expensive, and so I won't be able to buy it as much.
Well, you're just going to have to find the next hot thing, Jeff. We're already influencers, so now you're going to have to find out. Not mention it until they do, in fact, show up at auction years later, and then they'll become...
Or just be like, hey, everybody, what about Bordeaux? Bordeaux. Napa Cabs. Let's focus on that right now. Anyway, was there any... I think that pretty much rounds up the stuff that I wanted to...
there were some I always like to point out some of the stars that we see in auction. Not that these wines are not stars or stars in the making, but there were some, let's say, more common yet more expensive names. There was a handful of Romanée-Conti wines in last week. 14 Romanée Saint-Vivant. I think there were 3 bottles hammered at 2,400, and there was a bottle of the Eau Montrachet hammered at 55.50, which was, I think, fairly not terribly expensive for that wine. The ullage on it wasn't perfect, 3.5 centimeters. I mean, it wasn't bad, but that seemed a little low for me, just in considering other vintages recently are quite a bit more than that. And especially when you look at the new vintages, Corton Charlemagne, I think it was almost 80, what was it, like 83, 50 or something. But then, yeah, there was an 09 Rhone Saint Vivant hammered at 27.15. I think there were 2 of those, and some 3-pack, 100 acre, multiple 3-packs, actually 4 3-packs. They all sold for 13.20, which I thought was pretty impressive.
Did you notice all the action on the Domaine d'Auvenay?
Yeah, I was gonna mention Dauphiné. That Mazzi, the 98 Mazzi Chambertin.
Well, and then there was a 96 Merceau that also had 2 bids on it. So we're actually seeing multiple bids on some of these, higher priced bottles. I thought that was super fascinating.
Yeah, the Dauphiné Mazzi 98 was, I think, hammered at 30.50, which is pretty impressive. It's getting into, it essentially is the law territory as far as some of these numbers go. But yeah, the Merceau, Appellation Merceau, you're right, it's hammered at 29.30, I believe, which is, that's a lot.
Also, again, this gets into the influencer category. There ended up being 2 bids on the 2010 Pontic Canet, the 6 liter, that we actually mentioned this. So the Pontic Canet 6 liter, remember, we were talking about how, like, if you actually work out the math, it ends up being a pretty good price
exactly
per milliliter.
Per milliliter, exactly.
On Pontic Canet. So I thought that was like, I want to go to, whoever's taking that to a restaurant to cork it. I want to go with them, because I'll bet that's going to be a killer dinner right there with 6 liters of 2010.
Yeah, if they can get away with your restaurant corkage, scam, then that'll work.
Look, I think that is a legitimate approach, unless in the menu it says corkage is, $50 per 750 milliliters. If it just says corkage is $50, then look, it's false advertising if you don't cork this for $50. That's my theory. Anyway, anything else you wanted to mention before we wrap this thing up?
No, I think that was it. There was a 12-bottle vertical of Phelps Bacchus, which hammered at 17.60, which I actually didn't think was too bad for a full case of Bacchus from 04 to 09. So, it's always fun to see those vertical sets go. And a lot of other interesting stuff in there for sure, but those were some of the standouts, definitely.
Well, that just about wraps it up for our auction recap. Thank you for joining us. Please tune in to our next episodes this week. We'll be doing a discussion of upcoming lots in both France and then the US and the rest of the world. Anyway, with WineBid's finally hammered, my name is Jeff McGurn, and this, of course, is Paul Walker. Happy bidding and cheers.
Cheers.